All right, that sound is the 3:30 bell. Well, 3:30 my time zone. Sorry, I don't want to stress anybody out. Hello and welcome. This session is being recorded. My name is Jen Robinson, and I will be the moderator for this session titled From A to Gen Z, Understanding Unique Learning Needs of Our Youngest Students. Thank you for joining us, and please welcome Drs. Jennifer Vogel and James Meetze. Dr. Jennifer Vogel is an Associate Director in the Academic Engagement Center at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Dr. Vogel is a published researcher whose interests include online learning pedagogy, adult learning theory, and faculty learning communities. Dr. James Meetze is an Associate Professor in the Communication Arts Department in the Academic Engagement Center at the University of Arizona Global Campus, where he teaches courses with a focus on film studies and writing. He is the author of 5 books of poetry, and his work has also appeared in numerous books and literary periodicals, and has been translated into Spanish, Turkish, Finnish, Croatian, and Serbian. He's also the co-author and author of Transcending Genre, an introduction to the elements of creative writing and film, from watching to seeing. Today, we're fortunate to learn more from these 2 accomplished faculty about working with our youngest students. As we move through this presentation, if you have a question, please just click on the raise hand button and we will make sure to come to you during the presentation. Turning it over to you guys.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me all right, Jen? All right. Excellent. Thank you all and welcome. Jen just gave a fantastic introduction to the 2 of us. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to advance. There we go. Hi, I'm Jen, and James, you want to say a little hello?
Hi, I'm James.
Hi, I'm James.
Thanks everyone for coming.
What Jen didn't include in James's list of accomplishments is he's an award-winning filmmaker as well. So he's pretty cool. All right. So hi, welcome everybody to our presentation about Gen Z. We wanted to let you know kind of where the idea came from, why we were inspired to share this with you. And these are the 3 reasons right here. Between the 2 of us, we have 3 Gen Zers. Mine are the ones on the left. That's Andy, who's age 15. Sam is 20. And then James's son, Brighton, is 23 on the right-hand side. So we certainly know a lot. We're not Gen Zers ourselves, but we certainly know a great deal about them because they live in our houses and eat our food and all that good stuff. All right. So our topics for today, we have our introduction, some welcome, and then I'm going to launch a couple polls in just a second. We're going to talk about who is Generation Z, and in particular, who are they relative to other generations? How are they different from the generation that came before them, like millennials? How are they different from mine and James's generation, Generation X? So that'll be a good way to get us started. Then we're going to take a look at their learning needs and styles, particularly how are they different from previous generations? What is it unique about them that they need? Then we'll get into a discussion of the specific practices that work well with Generation Z students in online classrooms. Then we'll finish up with a discussion and a Q&A. All right. So first, we're going to start with a couple of polls of the audience. The first 2 questions I'm going to launch together. What generation are you? And then if you have children, what generation are they? And then the second poll will be something that's kind of fun. Let me go back to the polls here. Okay. All right. Are you guys seeing the poll?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay. So question 1, what generation are you? So I put the dates in here for you as well. So baby boomers are anyone born from 1946 to 1964. Generation X, which is James and myself, 1965 to 1980. And these are approximate dates here. Sometimes people say the dates are a little different. Millennials, 1981 to 1996. And then I would love to know if we have any Generation Z folks in the room with us, 1997 to 2012. All right. And then the next question, if you have children, what generations are they? So I've included Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z, and then whatever comes after that, which I actually am going to touch on a little bit later. there are some ideas about what are we going to call the next group that's coming along. All right. So if you haven't had a chance to answer the poll, please jump in. I see we have about 57% participation. I don't think I can answer the poll. James, maybe you can. Okay.
I also cannot.
You
I
cannot.
think
Okay.
because we're hosts,
Gotcha.
and everyone knows our answers already.
We already gave it away. That's true. Okay.
And yes, Lisa, if someone does not have children, does not want to have children, could not have children, what have you, you don't need to answer question 2.
Oh, I should have put a not applicable section there. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So I'll end the poll and we'll share the results. All right. So what generation are you? 30% of us are baby boomers, 50% Gen X, 20% millennials. We don't have any Gen Zs in the room. That's too bad. I was hoping they could, be our fact checkers. I ran some of this by my own kids, so we'll see. And then if you have kids, what ages are they? So we have some parents of Gen Xers, some parents of millennials, a couple parents of Gen Z, and then five folks here in the whatever comes after that category. Okay, great. Okay, the next poll, just for fun. How well do you know Gen Z lingo? Okay. There are 5 questions here. I'll give you a minute to take a look at these. So some common things that Gen Z kids say and what you think they mean. Take your best guess. Okay, you've got some good guesses coming in here. While you're taking your guesses, I will tell you the funny story. Last night, I had my 15-year-old take a look at a quiz that I found online. I said, I'm doing this presentation tomorrow. Here are some of the questions I would like to ask. There's like 20 questions. I said, can you help me pick 5? And he was going through this quiz and he said, nobody says this. Nobody says that. He said, this quiz was obviously written by a millennial. And I was like, oh, okay, says the Gen Z kid. So he said, let's find a different quiz. So these were hand selected by a 15-year-old. Can you bear that in mind? Okay, give you another minute or so to guess your answers. Okay. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results then, so we can see what the right answers, not that this is going to tell us the right answers, but I'll let you know what the right answers are. So what does drip mean? It is a stylish outfit. Yeah, most people got that one correct. Why is that a stylish outfit? I don't know. It just is. Okay, bet is to agree with someone. Okay. Not what else we might think. Living rent free, I think James and I might say this means something else when it comes to Gen Z kids, but when you can't stop thinking about something or someone and say, that song is living rent free in my head. Question 4, to take an L means to lose, and to take a W, or not take a W, to get a W, I don't know, is a win. So that's a loss. And then flop error, I had never heard of this until last night. When everything in your life is going wrong for a period of time, it's called a flop error. All right, we did pretty well. I think we got, most of us got the answers correct. Okay, good job.
Better than I did.
They did better than you did?
Naturally.
The stuff my kid says sometimes, I'm like, what is that? I don't even know. All right, so who is Generation Z? We'll just start with this quote. It is clear that a culture that has been shaped by the values, standards, and policies of one generation isn't necessarily going to be compatible with the next generation that comes through the door. And I think we can all acknowledge that whatever generation we are, we look to our parents and what they said about our generation when we were the young ones and these crazy kids, that kind of idea. So to give you a little context that I've mentioned somewhat before, so this is the most recent data from 2022, and I think it comes from the census. So this is the US population. So the earliest generation that might still be with us, I think the one that came before the greatest generation was called the silent generation. And I don't think we talked much about generations before that. So we do have some folks, part of the greatest generation, who are still with us. Oh, sorry, there's the silent generation. That's the next one. My mistake. Then baby boomer, which we know is a huge portion of our population, hence the name boom. And then we have the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the Gen Zs. So Gen Zs are the young folks who were born between 1997 and 2012. Currently, they are between the ages of 10 and 25, which is a really big range. So the oldest one may have just finished college. So someone who's 23, 24, 25, maybe he has just graduated from college, like my nephew. But the youngest ones, the 10-year-olds, are in 5th grade. So if you think about how different someone might be if they're in 5th grade versus having graduated from college, that is kind of the span of Gen Z. Gen Z students tend to be the children of Gen Xers like us, whereas millennials tend to be the children of baby boomers. And the millennials are the parents of the next generation that comes next. So what is being called the one that comes after this for now is being called Generation Alpha, just as an FYI. So children of millennials born between the mid-2010s and the mid-2020s. They're the first generation completely born in the 21st century, hence the name Alpha. Okay. So I mentioned earlier we would take a look at, so what's the difference between Gen Z and the generation that came before it, the millennials? So you can see a couple of comparisons here, raised by baby boomers versus Gen Xers, millennials having grown up more in an economic boom, and Generation Z more growing up during a recession. And I think it kind of tracks with their parents as well. Baby boomers grew up in an economic boom, millennials the same. Gen X, not so much. We're kind of considered the forgotten generation. We're a quite small generation. We were like the latchkey kids and kind of, not born at a great time. And hence our kids are sort of experiencing the same thing. Millennials tend to be idealistic. Gen Z, more pragmatic. Millennials focused on having experiences. Gen Z, saving money. Millennials, mobile pioneers. Gen Z, mobile natives. You may have heard of like a digital native, for instance. So that's someone who has been born completely within technology and they understand it very well. Millennials were, but Gen Z even more. Like they haven't really known a world without technology. Just as a side note related to work, Gen Z tend to have a stronger work ethic than millennials, and they're not as overconfident as millennials, which they get criticized for being those things. Okay. Another snapshot here to compare the difference. Use more limited technology versus advanced technology. Stronger economy versus recession. Less globally connected, more globally connected. College debt, college going, debt accumulating versus college maybe. James is going to mention that a little bit later. So college maybe and debt aware. Wore branded clothing, what brands? Less focused on social justice, more focused on social justice. So hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea of how this generation differs from the one before. All right, now let's take a look at some of the characteristics of Gen Z. They are for sure the most racially diverse generation. About 49% of Gen Z identify as non-white. 1 in 4 are Latinx. There's more focus on racial inequality, gender inequality. LGBTQ rights are big for many in this generation. They are influenced more by peers and social media. They use social media not just for getting into contact with people and doing fun things and posting fun videos, but they do use it to promote social causes. The term is called digital activism, which I think is pretty cool because I know that's the way they can get that message out as quickly as possible. My kids, fortunately, allow me to follow them on Instagram, at least what I see. Maybe there's another account, I don't know. But my oldest, the 20-year-old who's in college, will post things that are very upsetting, like this happened on the campus of my college and I want everybody to know about it. And it's posted in his story and big exclamation points, like bringing attention to this, injustice that happened. So I definitely see that a lot with my own kids. Taking a look at our next few things at the bottom here, shifting family and gender norms. If you think about previous generations, maybe, the TV show was Leave It to Beaver, or for our generation, The Brady Bunch. For this generation, it's Modern Family. That's what family looks like. And it is quite different from what we've seen previously. There are more stay-at-home dads, for instance, same-sex marriage in a lot of places. Also, an increased sense of social responsibility for this group, as I sort of touched on. Now, in terms of going to college, they actually are more of them are going to college, even if they're more debt aware. So of the 18 to 21-year-olds who are no longer in high school, this was from 2018, 57% are enrolled in college, compared to 52% of millennials of the same age and 43% of Gen Xers of that same age. So more and more of them are going to college, but they are aware of the debt that comes with that. A few other things: they are increasingly self-aware, self-reliant, innovative, and goal-oriented, and tend to be more pragmatic than their millennial predecessors. But the COVID, for sure, has impacted everybody. I think there's been a big impact on this group, sort of that dream deferred idea. And for some kids, going to college was deferred because they were supposed to go in fall of 2020 and couldn't, and things like that. So this group, Gen Z, they were in line to inherit a very strong economy with record low unemployment. And this all really has changed due to COVID and has reshaped our social, political, and economic landscape. So instead of looking towards a world of opportunity, a lot of Gen Z look into a very uncertain future, and it's quite scary. Okay, last thing I want to touch on, then I will hand this off to James, is to take a look. Oh, sorry, that's not true. I have one more thing. So some of the life events that shaped this group, it's interesting. We are shaped by the events that happen, and that does impact our generation, kind of make us, the characteristics that we are. This is a group that's living in a post 9/11 world. For the most part, they weren't alive when it happened, or they were very, very young. So they weren't alive to see it happen, but they are quite aware of the ramifications that came from that, concern with security and terrorism and things of that nature. So we saw our very first African-American president elected. This group also has experienced an exceedingly high number of school shootings, and then other movements like the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and COVID-19, as I mentioned. The kinds of things that Gen Z students are concerned about. They are concerned about the environment and climate change, LGBTQ rights, anxious about the rising cost of college, as we mentioned, gun violence and safety in general. 25% of them say that violence is their biggest concern. There we go. All right. So take a look at these charts. I'll give you a second to kind of take these in. On the left, we have, this is from the Pew Research Center, anxiety and depression at the top of the list in problems that teens see as problems. 70% saying that anxiety and depression is a major problem among people in their age group. Then bullying at 55%, drug addiction, alcohol, poverty, teen pregnancy, and gangs. So I want to draw your attention to the one at the top, the anxiety and the depression. So about 18% of Gen Z folks experience mental health of some kind. Anxiety is the highest of the mental health issues that these folks are experiencing. That percentage of anxiety is higher among females than males. About 50% of Gen Z students feel more stressed since the pandemic. As if I haven't said this enough, they are more anxious and more uncertain than the millennials that came before them. That said, in terms of mental health, they do seek out good relationships with friends and family. Despite this group being online a lot and being very present in social media, they really do appreciate face-to-face contact and connection with other people. The anxiety perhaps is coming from this 24-hour news cycle that we all know, and this hyper awareness of world problems. It's just, whenever something's going on, you know about it. It's there, it's everywhere you look, it's on your phone, it's popping up all the time. There's a concern very much about living in that online world and what that image is that they're portraying. And that idea that what you post or what you text to somebody is permanent. We tell these kids, it's like writing something in permanent marker. You can't erase that. It's out there. So there's an idea of, what is that image I'm portraying out there? Digital reliving, going back to look at your post. Who posted to it? What did they say? How did they like it? Did they not like it? A heightened sense of rejection if someone doesn't reply to your post. Cyberbullying, which we know was nothing we'd ever heard of in the past, and now it's quite prevalent. So along with the social media presence, FOMO and FOBLO. So FOMO is fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on what's happening, but FOBLO is fear of being left out, which you see more with girls compared to boys. With social media, I don't want to be left out of the conversation. And then just quickly here on the right-hand side, their top 5 concerns: cost of living, climate change, unemployment, mental health, and sexual harassment. So on that note, all right, sounds quite dire, but let me hand this off to James and we'll start to take a look at learning styles and needs. Oh, sorry, I had a few more slides, my mistake. So just a quick snapshot of UAGC students, which is where we are calling in from. So we've seen this shift, and this just goes along with ages, right? So back in 2005, 2006, there were no Gen Z students here because they weren't quite ready to come to college. So we had more students who were baby boomers, a lot of Gen Xers, and millennials were kind of starting to eke up. Now, this particular academic year, 22, 23, we see that that's shifting, and here comes this Gen Z group popping up. As James put it yesterday when we were talking, he said, we've got to get ready, they're coming. So this is the time to start thinking about, what do our programs look like? What is our college like? What kind of student support do we have for this young group who is coming? And just to take a look at what that looks like in the workforce, you can see that this has also shifted. So this is what we're preparing them for. So we're preparing folks, to come into college, get this degree, go out and get this career for jobs in 2030, jobs in 2040. And you can see how more and more of that, we're going to see this group in the workforce much more than we see now. All right, James, over to you.
All right. And one of those things that Jen just mentioned, thanks, Jen, is that these students are coming. We know we all work in institutions. We know that institutional change is rarely, if ever, immediate. And so a lot of what we're talking about today is really just to put the kernel of the idea in the mind of those of you who are with us, to think about what we're doing now that works and how we might adjust and anticipate what we will need to do for our students of the present and very near future. 5 words that capture the learning needs and styles of Gen Z students are relevance. Why is this relevant to me? Why is this relevant to what I want to do? And why is it relevant to what I need to achieve? Personalization. Gen Z students are so immediately able to access things that they choose, things that they can personalize for themselves, a la carte kind of experience in the online sphere and as well as the in-person sphere. So personalization, pragmatism, this has come up before, Jen mentioned it. These students are the children of parents who are often saddled with educational debt. They see the strains that puts on their parents. They don't want to feel that same strain themselves. And so they balance the weight of what happens if I am saddled with debt versus what do I get with my education. And seeing the uncertainty in job markets, especially over the past 2 years, really adds into that. Gen Z really seeks inclusivity. We talked about them being the most racially diverse generation yet, and they are also the most socially conscious. So they want to see inclusive spaces. not just in the makeup of the people who inhabit those spaces, but also in the materials that they have access to, in the makers of those materials. So really seeing an inclusive experience. And as we mentioned, anxiety. These are people who feel these global anxieties and personal anxieties in a very specific way, because it is what they have grown up in. And they are also very aware of their mental health, right? They are aware of the language used to discuss mental health. They are aware of what people can do to treat mental health, to seek help. And so this is something that is openly discussed. It's something that is probably more openly discussed than any previous generation. And it's something that we can hopefully anticipate and mitigate to some extent in the educational environment. Okay, next slide. So some of the learning needs and styles, and keep in mind that all of this, we don't have enough data yet because these students are still just too young. So much of this is a little bit speculative, and we can't generalize yet about an entire generation. But what we can anticipate, what we can see, is that Gen Z students, Gen Z learners, are people who have grown up. They are digital natives. They are used to using 5 screens at the same time. And Jen mentioned this FOMO, this fear of missing out, right? So they want access all the time to everything. They prefer video-based platforms. And Jen mentioned, we were talking about students maybe not wanting to go to college, partly because of the anxiety of student debt. And the accessibility of knowledge on platforms like YouTube. I know my own son, I was a guitar player in a band, and my son said, no, I don't want to take lessons from you. I can learn how to play that song on YouTube. He's far better than I ever was. Learned entirely on YouTube and being self-taught. So they want this multimedia experience. They have shorter attention spans because of the using up to 5 screens at a time, likely, right? Jumping from one idea to another, from one source of input to another. And so to catch their attention, to get them to pay attention to what you are presenting them with, we need to use entertainment, humor, and balance those more serious concerns to keep the attention of people who have access to everything all the time. They expect customization or an a la carte approach to education. And as I mentioned before, we know how difficult it is to enact change at the institutional level. This is not always something we can see in our programs. It's not always something that we can even conceive of in various program structures, institutional structures that we work within. So it's something that we might anticipate as we plan programs and courses of study in the future, in the near future. Students want to learn X about Y. They want to learn maybe how to write poetry, right? This is my own personal interest, because it relates to something that they have read, that they've seen on Instagram, something that they think they can use to achieve a certain goal. They might want to learn to play guitar, right? But somebody wants to develop a product. They can learn different areas, and they want that a la carte approach to education. Gen Z learners prefer intrapersonal learning as opposed to interpersonal learning. They like to learn next to, but not necessarily with others, right? And this feeds into the ADEIL mission, right? These are distance learning students. They might want to be distance learning students. However, they also seek those inclusive and communal spaces. They want to feel part of the community. They want to feel included in the community, but maybe do their work just on the edge of it, right? So we can go next slide, please, Jen. So we'll talk about some specific practices we can apply in the classroom. And I've just recently completed a redevelopment of one of the courses that I oversee in our Academic Engagement Center. And this is our kind of Gen Ed sequence. And this is Introduction to Film. And this class satisfies the aesthetic awareness criteria. However, it's ultimately an English course. It is asking students to analyze films, to analyze them in the way that they might analyze literature, but doing so with a visual medium. Next slide. So some of the things, practices that I took in developing this course, and if I had, say, my ideal course, this is maybe a few years out, some things I might keep in mind when redesigning it in the future. Speaking of inclusivity, the first thing that I did when looking at this course redevelopment was looking at a DEI rubric, getting that's diversity, equality, and inclusivity, and looking at how this is exhibited in the class and how it's lacking, right? And so really taking that at the very core of the redevelopment process of the class to create that more inclusive, inclusive space, diverse and inclusive space for students to see themselves reflected in the content, to see their experiences reflected in what they're learning, and to feel part of what they are learning here. How I did that in a class about film is by including a big list of films, and this speaks to the next point here, including a wide variety of films that speak to very many. Of course, we can never address all experiences, but we can try. And giving students the choice to pick films and assignments that speak to them, right? That are important to them, that are relevant to what they are doing. So giving students choice in discussions and assignments. Students also want independent access to learning resources. They want the resources to be there. They want to know where to find them, but they want to access them on their own independently. They also want cross-disciplinary alignment. And this is an area that we've really embedded in our English sequence of our Gen Ed program here at UAGC in giving students the ability to learn college writing by looking at what they either are majoring in or hope to do as a career. So really tying in the disciplines that they are working toward with the skills they are learning now in the present. Another thing is to align learning outcomes with relevant skills. Students want relevance. And we really need to show, and this is something I've had to do with the Introduction to Film course, show a student who is going to major in business why film analysis is important to their education. Well, analysis is analysis is analysis. This is a skill that students can apply regardless of the subject. So really drawing those connections for them, making it overtly clear as they come into the class so they know why they're doing what they're doing and what they can then do with it. Another area is fostering learning communities. Students want those communal spaces. They want to be included in community spaces, however, able to access them independently, right? Including more co-curricular development opportunities, tying in clubs, tying in educational societies, these types of development opportunities that students will use to build up their resumes, to build up their experience in the future. And giving students direct access to mental health services. And I think this is something that most universities are doing right now, have been doing for some time, but really making that a part of the distance learning experience. Okay, and next slide. I think we're, I can still talk a little bit about this, but I think we're at about the good time to have a Q&A. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys come off mute and just ask a question or make a comment. Jen, I'll hand this back over to you as the moderator.
Hi, I don't know about anybody else in here, but I have taken 3 pages of notes. Not only am I understanding my students a lot better, I think I might understand my own kids a lot better. I'm curious, in the position you're in, where you've had this opportunity to help others develop courses, for folks who are moving into that online or are still trying to figure out how to make their on-ground courses appropriate for online, what would be the top 2 things heading into a course development that, based on what you've done here, people should think about?
Thanks,
James,
Jen. That's a great question. Again, I'm going to say, starting with that DEI rubric, there are many available. Really looking at how diverse and inclusive your course material, your course environment, right? Because now we're talking about courses as environments. So how inclusive is this environment? How does it speak to the diverse students who might enter it? How does it make space for them? And how does it speak to their experiences? And this is something that Gen Z students value very highly, is having their experiences spoken to. And one of the things too, that this would be different for the on-ground folks, but here in an entirely online learning environment and asynchronous learning environment, we have implemented in some of our courses, spearheaded actually by our moderator here, Jen Robinson, live learning. And we are requiring that students, at least at one point during their entirely online course, show up, enter part of the community, enter discussion with their faculty member and their peers, but not just their immediate peers, peers who are enrolled in the same course at any point, because these courses are concurrent. So they can speak to somebody who is, in a later week in the course. They've written their first paper and gotten feedback, and so they can offer advice and really allow these students to feel part of this much larger community, much larger learning community than just the small microcosm of their immediate course.
Yeah, really, that's great, James. I'll just add to that. The 5 terms that James shared earlier that kind of characterize how Gen Z likes to learn: relevance, personalization, pragmatism, inclusivity, and anxiety. Not that they like to learn with that, but the kind of the qualities of where they're coming from. I feel like whenever we're working on a course development, I know there's lots of folks in this room here who have done this as well. You're creating the course to reflect what students need right now in 2022. And therefore, I think that what the Gen Z students are coming to the table with reflects sort of the direction that we're moving towards. So kind of by default, you're creating a course that meets their needs. But if I had to pick one word, I would say relevance. That's something that we certainly talk a lot about. In the Academic Engagement Center, we oversee, for the most part, our general education courses at UAGC. And we get asked that question a lot. What is this course about? Why do I have to take it? Why am I here? How does this matter to me? How does this connect to the reason I came here to get this degree in accounting or this degree in education? So the relevancy, I think, is a big piece.
I love that. I just wrote down, make space for relevance to their lives. That is such an important piece. Evan Smith writes in the chat, what is the line between helping students and giving in? Old thinking, don't give in to student pressure. Evan, if you could provide a little more context, we have about 5 minutes, so a good chunk of time to answer this question. Can you tell me more about what you mean by giving in?
Okay, well, I didn't mean to be, I'm sorry if it sounds a little negative, but back
No,
in my
that's
day,
why I want
back in my
you to
day,
have the
back in
opportunity
my
to
day,
explain. Yeah.
yeah, back in my day, student pressure included all sorts of things, like can we see the film backwards, or can we have some downtime? And I know that's trivial, but people were talking about relevance back in the 60s, but I mean, you have to take your gen ed, your general education, along with your accounting. And some people don't know what they want to do in college. I know that's changing, but I just want to figure out where is the balance between saying I'm going to change my philosophy class because you guys are so pragmatic. They may not interpret it that way. And we're going to have to cover the rationalists and everybody else. So, I mean, what do you do with the content?
Mhm.
Well, I'll jump in on this one. The content doesn't necessarily need to change, right? Though it might, considering new kind of sociocultural pressures that are put upon various content for various reasons. And that's I hear you, Evan, alluding to that, and I don't want to open that can of worms entirely in the few minutes we have left, but I think really it is creating that space for students to independently access their ways into that material, to make it relevant to their own experience and to what they want to get from it. I'm an old liberal arts guy. I lament the perceived, heat death of the liberal arts, as it were, in various ways. But we have to adapt to what students want, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, we serve them, and have to figure out how to convey content, to deliver content that we believe they need, with that piece that makes it relevant to their experience.
Yeah, James, I think what you said is that when you started to talk, you said we're not going to change the content, and yeah, you're right. We are required to have these certain competencies that students need to know. So the content's going to stay the same, but perhaps it's the delivery. And I'm looking at our colleague in the room here, not to put him on the spot, Dan Tiniano, who is our kind of resident expert in all things virtual reality. So yeah, we're going to keep the same content. You still need to know this content, but maybe you're going to deliver it in this super cool virtual reality kind of way. And that therefore makes it more relevant.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was a great question, a really great question, Evan. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
To add to that, one more thing is that our content can just get bigger, right? We have more of it as we go on. There are more perspectives to take into account when delivering content, and so the content gets deeper, it gets more diverse and more inclusive as we move forward into it.
Well, we're down to just a minute. You guys timed this absolutely perfectly. And I know I have written down 2 action items I will be working on starting tomorrow just from this presentation. So thank you so much for that information on helping.
Jen, you muted yourself.
That was intentional. Thanks for helping us get to know our Gen Z students a little more. I have put the conference evaluation in the chat. Please take some time to complete that, and please enjoy the rest of the ADEIL conference. Thank you so much to Dr. Meetze and Dr. Vogel. We've learned so much today from you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.